This is Mr. Martin. These are video notes for Pre-Calc Advanced. We're on to Unit 6. In this video we're going to be looking at the basic graphs of sin x and cosine x. So if you notice here we've got the standard form y is equal to d plus a sine bx minus c, and for the different trig functions, we're just going to substitute out. We'll substitute in cosine for that, and then we'll do tangent, and then we'll do our reciprocal functions. So this is our standard form for the sine graph. This value of d, it could be in the front like it is here, or it could be in the back. It could be plus d at the end, so don't get confused about that. And the basic idea here is, since this is the sine graph, what we want to be doing is we want to graph the y-coordinates as we go around the unit circle. And we're going to look at a few key points here because these are really easy to graph. We're going to look at these quadrant angles. So we know our coordinates here are 1, 0. Our coordinates up at the top are 0, 1. And then over here at pi we have negative 1, 0. And then down here at 3 pi over 2 I have 0, negative 1. And again, since we're graphing the sine, at each one of these angles, we're just going to be looking at the y-coordinate. So we're going to be looking at these highlighted values. So let's go ahead and start filling out this chart. Let's start at 0. So we want the sine at 0. So here's the angle 0, and the sine is 0. So that gives us the ordered pair 0, 0. And then let's go up to the top. The sine up at pi over 2 is 1. So that's going to be 1. And again, we just picked these quadrant angles because they're convenient and easy to figure out. And they're easy to graph. Okay, then we're going to do sine of pi. We're plugging in these x values here for my x here and sine of x. So sine of pi, again, that's the highlighted value. It's the y-coordinate. Sine corresponds to the y-coordinate, so that's 0. And then continuing around to 3 pi over 2, the sine is negative 1. And then coming back all the way around to 2 pi, the sine is going to be 0. So this gives us 5 points as we go around the circle, 1 rotation counterclockwise, positive direction. So now to fill out the rest of these, I'm going to go backwards here. So now if I go negative pi over 2, that puts me down at the bottom. So the sine is negative 1. And then negative pi, so starting here at 0 and going clockwise to pi, that's 0. And then back up at the top, negative 3 pi over 2, that's going to be positive 1. And then going all the way around in the negative direction, that puts us back where we started again, that's 0. So I have this whole chart of ordered pairs. And what I want to do is I want to graph them. So I have negative 2 pi, 0, and notice my x-axis here are the angles, and my y-axis is going to correspond to the y-coordinates, the highlighted values, on the unit circle here. So I have negative 2 pi, 0, negative 3 pi over 2, 1, negative pi, 0, negative pi over 2, negative 1, 0, 0, pi over 2, 1, pi, 0, 3 pi over 2, negative 1, and 2 pi is 0. So we have a pattern here, and after you do a bunch of these, you'll figure out the pattern. And what we want to do is we want to connect these points that we graphed with a nice smooth curve. So it's going to look something like this. You want to make sure that you do nice smooth curves and that you don't connect these with just straight lines. Okay, so here is actually what we're going to talk about as 2 periods or 2 cycles of f of x equals sine of x. And if we look at just this part here, we could have looked at the other side as well, but we're just going to look at this part here. This one portion here, this is one cycle or one period 1 period of y equals sine x or f of x equals sine of x. You notice it's sort of an S-shaped curve. Okay, so that's our basic sine curve. Let's take a look at some properties of it. So we want the domain. Now in this graph we've only drawn 2 cycles of it, but really it's going to continue on forever to the left and to the right. So our domain is going to be all real numbers. Then for our range, we can see that the highest value it goes to is 1, and the lowest value it goes to is -1. So our range is going to be all values of y between -1 and 1. Okay, our amplitude, which we'll talk about again in a bit, but that's the highest values that it's going to reach. Okay, and we're always talking about absolute value in this case. So at the top it goes to 1, at the bottom it goes to -1. From our middle points, which are on the x-axis, they won't always be, but in this case they are. So our amplitude in this case is going to be 1. Alright, and then our period, so I highlighted this 1 period, and we want to know how long is that. Well, it starts at 0 and it ends at 2 pi, so our period here is going to be 2 pi. And we'll talk about how to actually calculate that based on the equation that you're given. Okay, and then we have x-intercepts. So again, here, since we only have 2 periods, we only have a handful of intercepts, but this is going to go on forever. And we can see that there's an intercept at 0, there's an intercept at pi, there's an intercept at 2 pi, there would be another one at 3 pi, there's one at -pi. So basically, what we have, the x-intercepts are at multiples of pi, or we can write this as pi k. And then k would be, k is any integer. Okay, normally we would just write it, the intercepts, as pi k, and that would tell us, oh, every multiple of pi, so k would be 0, k would be 1, k would be 2, k could be -1, and that would give us all our intercepts. And then as far as y-intercepts, we can see this only intersects the y-axis at 0. So our y-intercept is 0, 0. Okay, we have a maximum value. It goes up to 1. And a minimum value at -1. And those are the properties of our sine curve. Okay, and as you do more, you'll get the hang of this. We're also going to talk about phase shift, vertical shift. We'll talk about the distance between the key points. So these are our key points here. They're either the ones that are, in this case, on the axis, or they're the maximum values or the minimum values. Okay, so in this, I've circled 5 key points here, and that's what we're going to be talking about. How far is it, the distance between these key points? In this case, they're pi over 2 apart. Alright, so let's go ahead and move on to, oh, we got symmetry down here. So this actually has origin symmetry. So if I take this part of the graph and I rotate it 180 degrees, it will line up back with itself. So we have origin symmetry. Alright, now we can move on to cosine. So we're going to go through the same procedure here. Okay, here's our standard form. Y is equal to d plus a cosine bx minus c. And again, we're going to be looking at the unit circle, and we're going to be graphing the x coordinates because the cosine corresponds to the x. So again, I've got 1, 0, 0, 1, -1, 0, 0, -1. And since I'm graphing cosine, I'm going to be looking at the x coordinates as I go around. And again, we use these quadrant angles because they're convenient and they're easy to draw. So again, let's start at 0. The cosine at 0, that's my highlighted value at 0 is 1. Okay, up at pi over 2, it's 0. Over at pi, it's negative 1. At 3 pi over 2, it's 0. And then back here at 2 pi, it's 0. Then we can go backwards. So going this way, pi over 2, that would be negative pi over 2. We have 0. Going to negative pi, that's the same place as pi, just going the other direction to get there. That's negative 1. Negative 3 pi over 2 puts me up at the top. The cosine, the x-coordinate, is 0. And then going all the way around in the negative direction puts me back where I started, and that would be 1. So then when we have these ordered pairs, we can go ahead and graph those. I have negative 2 pi, 1, negative 3 pi over 2, 0, negative pi, negative 1, pi over 2, 0, 0, 1. So that's going to be a y-intercept there. Pi over 2, 0. Pi, negative 1, 3 pi over 2, 0, oops, sorry, that should be a 1, and 2 pi, 1, because over here at 2 pi, if we went all the way around, my cosine is 1. Alright, and then again, we've got these points here, and we want to connect them with a nice smooth curve. In this case, it's going to look something like this, and then we'll continue like so. So again, in this picture, we actually have 2 cycles of the cosine curve, and this highlighted part here, this is 1 period. Okay, and again, notice the shape of it here. It's sort of this fanned out U shape. Okay, it's a big U. Sometimes I think of it as like a fancy fruit bowl. So there you've got, 1 period over here. We can see that it goes from 0 all the way to 2 pi, that repeating part. So let's look at the properties of the cosine. So the domain, again, we only have 2 periods here, but this is going to go on forever, so that's going to be all real numbers. My range, it's again going from negative 1 at its lowest point to positive 1. The amplitude, well, what's the highest or the lowest? Remember, that's going to be absolute value. We'll talk about that in the next video. That's going to be 1. My period is 1 repeating part, so that's that U shape, that bowl shape, is 2 pi. My x-intercepts, now I can see my x-intercepts are at these different values of pi over 2. So these are multiples of pi over 2. So we would write pi over 2 times k. Again, k is going to be an integer. My y-intercept, only one of them up there at the top, is at 0, 1. The maximum value I can reach here is 1. The minimum value I can reach is negative 1. And our symmetry, we can see that they're mirror images, these 2 periods of each other over the y-axis. So this has y-axis symmetry. Alright, so these are the 2 basic graphs of sine x and cosine x. Make sure that you understand the different shapes. Again, here we have this S shape. Okay, it's sort of like a sideways S. And then over here we have this, I like to call it a fruit bowl, but you can think of it any way you want, but it kind of goes like that. And again, you want to make sure that these are curved, and you don't just connect the points that we decided to graph with straight segments. Alright, so as usual, if you have any questions, make sure that you ask those when you see me in class. Write them down in the margin. Always pause and rewind as needed, and we'll see you in the next video.